This course will teach you the basics of test-driven development while building a React app. My name is Eric Mirgaliev, and I've used test-driven development to build front-end applications for the last few years. In this course, you will create an app with a few simple features where for each feature, you will write a test first, make it pass by adding code, and then refactor. After finishing, you will gain the full power of TDD, which provides you with better focus. You end up writing a lot less code because you need just enough to make the test pass, and anything else is a distraction. You get better architecture with less tightly coupled code and more cohesive components. And you'll get less code, which leads to fewer bugs, as well as simpler maintenance. And it comes with high test coverage, so when you're updating your app, you have the confidence that everything is still working. And the tests describe the intended behavior of the component and document the edge cases. These skills will be immensely useful if you want to work in a big company with strict code quality and a low tolerance for production bugs. In each video, I get straight to the point and show you how to do a very specific thing without wasting any of your time. And if you like to work with the code on your own pace, with each video, I include a GitHub link that shows all the changes. I designed this course for developers who already know the basics of unit testing in React and want to start using test-driven development, but unsure how. Enroll in this course now and see how to use TDD to build a React app. This is the app we will build using test-driven development. It is an example of a home renting service where at the top we have a header and the list of homes in the content area. The homes are loaded from an API endpoint. Clicking on the book button opens a dialog where you enter the check-in and checkout dates. It shows you the total cost. Then you click the book button, which books the home via an API request. It closes the dialog and shows a toast notification. That doesn't seem like much, but it has a few crucial bits of functionality that represent the core value of an application, and you will see how test-driven development works in helping you build that. You need to have some experience with unit testing in React for this course. If you wrote at least a couple of unit tests before, you should be okay. Otherwise, I suggest going through React's testing guide or watch a couple of videos on YouTube. You also need some knowledge about using React itself. Since the app is pretty simple, there isn't anything complicated, but it's best to be familiar with building basic components using useState and useEffect hooks, and nothing really beyond that. The app also uses Bootstrap CSS for styling, so familiarity with this would be helpful but totally optional. And the last thing worth mentioning is behavior subject from RxJS. It might sound intimidating if you haven't used RxJS before, but behavior subject is nothing more than a simple implementation of observer subscriber pattern. The components in the app use it to emit and listen for events. It's an attractive alternative when you don't want to deal with all the boilerplate that comes with state management libraries. It's super simple to use when you just want to emit events from one part of the app and listen for these events in another part. And that's about it. Let's start by visiting React docs and finding the command that allows you to create a brand new application. Let me just copy it here and paste it into my terminal and rename the app to be TDD React and run it. After it finishes, I go into this brand new folder with the app and run npm start to start the app. Alright, and now I see it here. The next step is to install Bootstrap. So go to the docs again, copy this command. In another terminal window, paste it and execute it. Alright, and then go back to the docs and copy this line that I need to add to my application to import the downloaded CSS from Bootstrap. So it's index.js, and I paste it right here and then restart the app. And Bootstrap should be installed. All right, now let's delete this file that I'm not going to use. And then add this image to the public folder that I will use to display each individual home in the list. And then delete all the default CSS that came with the app. We won't need that. And then go to the app.js file which represents the app, and remove everything and replace it with two components that I'm going to create momentarily, header and homes. All right, now let's create components folder and create header component. And it's all the standard stuff here, export default function header, and for the markup is just going to say header right now. And don't forget to import React to turn it into a real component. And then the second component, homes, exactly the same thing. I'll just rename it to homes like that. And then back to the app.js and make sure to import those components. I use VS Code auto import feature, so if you see some random imports happen here and there without seeing me typing them manually, that's because of this. All right, now check the app. And here is our scaffolded components. In this section, we'll add the application navbar, which consists of two parts. The top part shows the logo, search, and menu, and the bottom part shows the list of filter buttons. Building this header is a super quick introduction to test-driven development, so we won't spend any time making these elements perform any functions. Let's launch the test runner. Then head into the app, into the components folder, and start adding the first test file for the header component. Here goes all the testing boilerplate by importing the React, then importing the header component, declaring the variable for storing the container, and then adding before each statement for rendering this component before each test. And then goes the first test. Let's say it should show the logo. And just for now, I'm going to say that I expect true to be true, just to have the whole thing execute and check that there's no errors during this process, and that I got the boilerplate right. Alright, that executed. So go back and adjust it to be the real assertion, and check that the container contains an element with a test ID logo. And I would expect it to be truthy, meaning that it found something that is considered to be the logo. Alright, that should fail, and it does. Right here it says it cannot find an element with test ID logo. So let's go ahead and make it pass into the header component. And the easiest way to make it pass is by adding this div. It can be anything for now, but the most important thing is the data test ID property that specifies logo, just like that. Now we're running the test and it is passing because it found the logo. Alright, that was easy. Let's keep going. The next element is the search. So just copy and paste the existing test and change logo to search, just like that. Now the test is failing again because it cannot find the search element. So let's go to the component and add another div, and now with search ID. Alright, test is passing. Perfect. Now let's add the test for the menu, and the same thing, change search to menu. See the test failing by not finding the menu, and we make it pass in the exact same way, adding another div with the menu test ID. Alright, everything is passing. Loading the app in the browser shows the element that we just added. Now let's refactor this to look closer to the final design. So this parent div turns into a nav with some vertical padding and a border at the bottom. These are all Bootstrap CSS classes, by the way. And the logo turns into a link with an image inside of the logo. And search turns into a form with an input element and appropriate classes. And the menu turns into a list of links. Just like that. Now check the test runner to make sure everything is passing, and there is an error. It looks like I forgot to use class name property instead of class, which is expected when you do this in React. So let me Rename all these class instances into class name, just like that. Check the test runner again, and it's all green. Perfect. Now let's see what it looks like in the browser. And there it is. Looks good. Alright, now let's add the filters. And we start with copying the existing test, renaming it to should show filters. Alright, and the first filter we're going to assert against will be home type. Okay. Checking the test, and it is failing as expected. Now let's go to the template. And first, let's put this entire element into another div, just like that. And then under the nav, add another div that will contain all the filters. And then add our filter, home type. Just like that. Now check the test. And it is passing. Now let's add assertions for the rest of the filters. And one would argue that it's not recommended to put multiple assertions into a single test, but sometimes I think it's okay to be flexible with that rule and just be whatever is more practical. In this case, it's exact same assertions with just different ID for the same kind of element, so I'm okay with putting them into the same group. But if things get more complex, I can always refactor it. So just duplicate this a few times. And then change the IDs to what we expect the filters to have. Now check the test runner, see that it fails. Good. And go back to the template and duplicate this filter button and rename the IDs just like we did in the test. Alright. Check the test, and now it is passing. Now that's what it looks like in the browser. So now it's the step for refactoring. Go back to the template and style the container first. Add margin padding. Make it fluid. Set max width to 100%. Bottom border, and make it a container. Then add classes to the buttons. Prevent the text from wrapping. Add margin, padding, the button style, and make it the secondary button style. Then apply this to all the buttons. And update the text button content. Alright, now let's check that the test is still passing after the refactoring. Cool. Now let's load it in the browser, and this looks perfect. This section will add a listing of homes that the app will fetch from our mocked backend. For each home, it will display the image, title, location, and price. Alright, let's get started by creating a new test file for the homes component. And then let me borrow all the existing tests from the header component and paste them here. And delete everything except one test. And then update render function to render homes component instead of header. Alright. And then the test would be should show homes. And here I'll use getAllByTestID function from the testing library to grab all the elements from the container that have the home ID. It returns an array, and I would expect this array to be the size of greater than 0, meaning that the component should display at least one home. Alright, check the test runner and it should fail, and it is. Then go into the template. And the easiest way to make this test pass would be to create this div element with the data test ID to be home, and the content can be whatever for now. Alright? Check the test runner, and it is passing. Super simple. Now, in real world, the list of homes will come from the API in the form of a promise. So there will be some kind of API client with a method, get homes, something like that. But for now, I will ignore this API client and just say that my homes data promise is a straight up promise that resolves immediately and returns an array of homes. So let's add a fake array of homes and see how we can render them here in the template. To add the data stub, let's take a look at the example of the real API call. It's an array of objects where each object is a home, and it has 4 properties: title, image, location, and price. So let's start by declaring the first home here and set the title. Then image, let's just copy it from here. Location and price. Then duplicate it a couple of times and update the strings. And we have our stub. Now we're going to get to that data by calling .then on the promise. And the callback will receive the data. And before I do anything with it, let me declare this homes variable here and put it in the template. Now in the promise callback, I'm going to set the value for this homes variable to be the result of mapping over the array of homes, and for each returning this div with the home test ID. I'm not using the data declared in each home object. I just want to get the list for now. Okay, now I'm rerunning the test, and I expect it to pass because I just created 3 div elements with the test ID home, and in the test we verify that there's at least one of them, so it should pass. But it doesn't. Here we see that template doesn't render any home elements at all. It's just an empty div. To figure out why this happens, let's add a console log statement right before the component returns the markup. And here in the test, right before we're trying to find any homes in the component. And it kind of makes sense what we see here. Right before the component renders homes, we see that the variable with homes is undefined, it doesn't have any homes. And then we try to assert that there are some homes, and we found none. That means that the callback function in our promise never gets a chance to execute and build the list of homes when the component gets rendered by our tests. So let's find out why that is and how to fix it.